In a world full of noise and pride, one voice reminded America what honesty sounds like. Barack Obama didn't raise his voice, he raised the truth. And what came next stunned even Donald Trump. It was one of those mornings when the world seemed to hold its breath. The sky over Washington, D.C. was pale gray and a thin mist hung over the streets. Reporters gathered outside the grand marble building where history was about to be made. You could feel the weight of the day in the air, the quiet before a storm. Inside, the main hearing chamber was already packed. Rows of officials, advisors, and lawmakers filled every seat. The hum of quiet whispers rippled across the room. Some people were nervous, some curious, and a few were clearly on edge. Everyone knew this wasn't just another political meeting. This was something bigger, something raw. At the center of it all sat a long wooden table, polished to a shine under the bright ceiling lights. Two microphones faced each other across it, one for Barack Obama, the former president who had once promised hope and calm in times of division, and the other for Donald Trump, the current president, known for his fiery tone and unshakable confidence. Two leaders, two legacies, and one truth waiting to surface. The cameras lined the back wall, their red lights blinking like tiny watchful eyes. Every word said in that room would be heard across the nation. But for now, all you could hear was the soft rustle of papers and the steady clicking of pens. Then a murmur spread. He was here. Barack Obama entered the room with his usual quiet grace. He walked calmly, greeting the committee chair with a polite nod. Dressed in a dark suit and a pale blue tie, he looked composed, serious, and prepared. His expression gave away nothing, but his eyes showed focus, were sharp, alert, ready. Moments later, the second door opened. Donald Trump walked in, surrounded by his aides. His posture was firm, his chin slightly raised, his expression confident as always. He waved once toward the crowd, then took his seat across from Obama. The contrast between the two men was striking, calm versus force, silence versus fire. The tension in the air thickened. No one dared to speak. Even the smallest cough echoed too loudly in the room. The chairperson cleared his throat and spoke into the microphone. This hearing will now begin. The committee welcomes former President Barack Obama and President Donald Trump. Both men nodded but said nothing. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. The two men, once bound by the same office but separated by vastly different visions, now faced each other without barriers. No teleprompters, no rallies, no distance. Just truth waiting to be told. Trump leaned back in his chair, his hands clasped together, his expression unreadable but defiant. Obama sat upright, calm, with a folder of notes before him. His hands rested lightly on the table. He didn't glance around. He didn't fidget. He was focused entirely on the man across from him. The atmosphere was tense but magnetic. Everyone in the room could sense that this wasn't going to be a polite exchange of ideas. It was something deeper, personal, moral, maybe even historic. For years, both men had represented different sides of America. Two worlds with clashing values, clashing voices, and clashing truths. Now they were face to face, each carrying the weight of their choices, their mistakes, and their beliefs. Outside the building, a crowd had gathered. Some stood in silence, holding their breath. Others whispered to each other, wondering what would happen inside those walls. Would they argue? Would they shake hands? Would the truth finally come out? No one knew. Inside, the chairperson spoke again, reminding everyone of the rules. But the words felt distant, because what everyone really wanted wasn't procedure. It was confrontation. Obama adjusted his microphone slightly, breaking the silence with a quiet but steady movement. He looked up, and for a brief second his eyes met Trump's. There was no smile, no hostility, just recognition. Two men who understood that in this moment the nation was listening. Trump gave a small nod as if to say, "Let's get this over with." Obama didn't respond. The chairperson looked between them. "Mr. Obama," he said, "you may begin with your statement." Obama's fingers brushed the edge of his notes, but he didn't look down. He didn't need to. He already knew what he wanted to say. He took a slow breath. The microphones picked up even the faint sound of it. The room leaned in. Even the people who didn't like him couldn't look away. For a few long seconds he said nothing. And in that silence every person in the room could feel it. The beginning of something important, Finally, Obama spoke. His voice was calm but clear, like a slow wave moving across still water. "Let's start," he said. And with those two simple words, the hearing began, not with anger, not with shouting, but with quiet power. No one could have known what those words would lead to. But as the first sentence echoed through the chamber, it was already clear. This day would not end the way it began. Something was going to change. Something was going to be revealed. And no matter who walked away, claiming victory, the truth was about to speak louder than both of them. The room had gone completely still after Obama's quiet words. Every eye turned toward him. Every breath seemed to pause. He began softly, his tone measured, almost gentle. But underneath that calm voice there was strength, the kind that doesn't shout to be heard. "America is strong," he said, "but we are not unbreakable." He looked up, his gaze sweeping across the room. "We are a nation built on ideals, fairness, equality, opportunity. Yet too many families wake up each day unsure how they'll make it to the next." A few lawmakers shifted in their seats. Some nodded. Others stared at their notes, uncomfortable with the truth they already knew. Obama spoke of the small towns where factories had closed years ago and never reopened. He spoke of parents juggling 2 jobs and still unable to afford their children's medicine. He painted a picture of America that was proud but wounded, a country still fighting for balance between what it promised and what it delivered. "The truth," he said, "is that millions of hardworking people feel unseen. They carry this country on their backs, yet they're told to be patient while the powerful argue over who's to blame." The words were sharp, but his voice never wavered. He moved to another topic, healthcare. He reminded the committee of the progress made years ago, then quietly explained how parts of it had begun to crumble. Hospitals in rural areas closing, costs rising again, families skipping doctor visits because of bills that never stopped coming. "No nation can call itself strong if its people can't afford to stay alive," he said. You could hear pens stop moving. Even Trump's aides, who had been whispering, went silent. Then Obama spoke of climate. "Storms are stronger. Summers are hotter. Fires burn longer. It's not opinion. It's reality." He paused for a moment, letting the words settle. "We can't pretend the air we breathe and the water we drink don't matter. The planet doesn't care about politics. It responds to actions, or to silence." A soft murmur spread through the crowd. Everyone knew that this was one of Trump's weakest points. Obama didn't look at him yet. He continued, weaving between facts and feelings, statistics and stories. He spoke of students weighed down by debt, of veterans returning home to struggle with invisible wounds, of children growing up watching leaders argue instead of lead. "Leadership," he said, "isn't about claiming victory every day. It's about admitting what's broken and having the courage to fix it." Finally, he turned his gaze directly toward Trump. His tone remained respectful, but his eyes held steel. "Mr. President," he said slowly, "honesty is not weakness, it is strength. The country deserves honesty, especially from those trusted to guide it." Trump didn't move, but his jaw tightened. Obama went on, "We can argue about numbers, but we can't argue about pain. We can trade speeches, but we can't trade away responsibility, and no amount of pride can cover the cracks that people see every single day." There was a faint tremor in the air, that invisible feeling when truth starts pressing against walls built to contain it. Obama reached for his notes but didn't open them. Instead, he looked straight ahead and spoke from memory. "When I left this office," he said, "I knew the next chapter would be written by others. And I hoped it would be written with compassion. But compassion has been replaced by denial. We can't solve problems we refuse to see. We can't heal wounds we pretend aren't there." He leaned forward slightly. "The American dream isn't about headlines or applause. It's about people. People who still believe their leaders care enough to tell them the truth." For a moment, his voice softened again. "The world is watching us. Not for perfection, but for honesty. Because honesty is what gives hope meaning." No one in the room dared to interrupt. Obama finished his statement with a single closing line that struck like a slow thunderclap. "If we care about this nation," he said, "then we must speak truth, even when it hurts, even when it costs, and especially when it's easier to stay silent." He placed his hands together on the table and waited. The echo of his final words lingered in the air, quiet but powerful. It wasn't the kind of speech that brought applause. It wasn't fiery or boastful, but it reached people because it was real. Across from him, Trump finally shifted, tapping his fingers once against the table. His expression was unreadable, part irritation, part calculation. He looked around the room, then back at Obama, his eyes narrowing just slightly. The chairperson cleared his throat. "Thank you, Mr. Obama. President Trump, you have the floor." The words were like a match striking stone. Trump adjusted his microphone, leaned forward and smiled. But the smile didn't reach his eyes. "Let's correct a few things," he said, his voice low but charged with energy. And in that instant, the calm that Obama had brought to the room began to shift. You could feel the spark of something sharper, louder, about to erupt. The storm that everyone had been waiting for was finally gathering strength. For a few long seconds, the room stayed silent after Obama's final words. It was the kind of silence that felt alive, thick with expectation, heavy with unspoken challenge. Then slowly, Trump leaned forward, adjusted his microphone, and gave a half-smile that told everyone he was ready to strike back. "Let me make something very clear," he began, his voice firm and controlled, but carrying that familiar rhythm that always pulled attention his way. "America has never been stronger than it is right now." The tone was confident, almost theatrical. He paused just long enough to let the statement hang in the air before continuing. "Jobs are up. The stock market is higher than ever. We've rebuilt our military. We've made this country respected again. People are winning, finally winning, after years of weakness." His words rolled out fast, polished from repetition, like a speech he'd given many times before. But here, across from Obama, every word carried more weight. He pointed slightly with his hand as if drawing an invisible line between himself and Obama. "You talk about problems. I talk about results. The difference is, I've done more for this country in a few years than most presidents did in decades." Some of his supporters in the back rows nodded. Others whispered, encouraged by his strength. Trump continued, gaining energy with every sentence. "You talk about struggling families. Those families have jobs now. You talk about debt. We're fixing that. You talk about climate. But I care about people having heat in their homes, food on their tables, gas in their cars. Real things that matter." His voice grew louder, his hands moving as he spoke. "The American people are proud again. They're confident again. They don't need lectures. They need leaders who deliver. And that's what I'm doing." For a moment, it seemed like he was turning the tide. The force in his voice filled the room, pressing back against Obama's calm logic with raw emotion. But then, the energy began to shift. As Trump went on, his sentences started to blur together. His examples repeated. His certainty began to sound more like defiance than truth. "The media doesn't talk about our success. They never do. They only talk about problems, and you're doing the same thing. You're trying to paint a dark picture when this country is shining brighter than ever before." Obama watched quietly, not interrupting. His face didn't change, but his stillness made the contrast even sharper. One man steady, the other growing louder. Trump noticed it too. He leaned in, his tone hardening. "You can talk about honesty all you want, but I'm telling you, people are better off now. America is respected again because we stopped apologizing for our greatness." He spread his arms wide, as if addressing the whole nation through the cameras. "You want to talk about truth? The truth is, people are happy. They're safe. They're proud to be Americans again. And nobody's going to take that away from them." The room stayed quiet, but not with admiration, with unease. Something in the air had shifted. His words were powerful, but they weren't answering the heart of Obama's message. Then he looked directly at Obama. "You had 8 years. 8 years to fix all the things you're talking about. Why didn't you?" It wasn't just a question, it was a challenge. Obama didn't move. His expression stayed calm, but Trump pressed on. "You talk about honesty, but your policies left people behind. You talk about unity, but the country was divided long before I got here. Don't lecture me about responsibility." His voice cut through the room like a blade. "America's doing great. Better than ever. The only people who don't see it are the ones who don't want to." He paused as if expecting applause, but none came. The silence returned. Deeper this time, more uneasy. For a moment, Trump's confidence faltered. He glanced around the room, realizing the energy he commanded outside these walls didn't quite exist here. This wasn't a rally. This was a hearing. And across from him sat a man who knew exactly how to wait for an opening. Trump cleared his throat and leaned back, forcing a smile. You can talk all day about problems, Barack, but the truth is, in this country is thriving. We're stronger, richer, safer. That's what matters. People care about results, not speeches. Then he looked to the committee chair and added, "That's all I have to say." He sat back, folding his hands, trying to look composed. But the stillness of the room told another story. The rhythm of his words had been fierce, but something underneath them had cracked. A thin line between confidence and avoidance. Obama looked up slowly, his expression unreadable. He didn't speak right away. He just waited. The silence stretched, pressing down again like a weight. And when Obama finally opened his mouth to respond, the room tensed, because everyone could sense it. The calm was ending. The clash was about to begin. The silence after Trump's speech was thick enough to feel. Every person in that hall knew what was coming. The quiet before impact. Obama sat still, his hands folded, his face unreadable. But behind that calm there was focus. He had listened to every word. And now he was ready to answer. "Mr. President," Obama began, his tone even, his voice steady. "You say America has never been stronger. But strength isn't just numbers on a chart. It's not just the stock market or military spending. Strength is when a family doesn't have to choose between rent and medicine. It's when a farmer can survive one bad season without losing his land. It's when our children breathe clean air without wondering what we've done to their future." Trump's lips tightened, but he said nothing. Obama continued, "You speak of success. But what about the growing debt? What about hospitals closing in towns where people have nowhere left to go? What about the families rebuilding after storms that keep coming harder every year?" His tone sharpened slightly. "You talk about greatness, but true greatness doesn't ignore pain. It confronts it." The words landed like quiet thunder. Obama wasn't shouting, and he didn't need to. The weight of his words did the work for him. Trump leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "You're talking like the country's falling apart," he snapped. "It's not. It's winning. We're winning more than ever before." Obama didn't flinch. "Winning isn't enough if the people aren't well," he replied. "If they can't afford a home, or if they're scared to walk outside because division is tearing our streets apart, that's not winning. That's pretending." Trump's jaw clenched. He shifted in his seat, irritation flickering behind his expression. "You love to talk, Barack. You always did. Beautiful words. But words don't fix things. I fix things." Obama paused for a long moment. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "fixing things begins with admitting what's broken." That sentence hung in the air like a match ready to ignite. Trump smirked, but his voice had changed. The calm tone was slipping. "You know what's broken?" He shot back. "The lies you told this country. The division you caused. The chaos you left behind. I had to clean it up. There it was. The shift everyone could feel coming. The conversation was turning. Policy was fading. Pride was taking its place." Obama's eyes stayed locked on Trump, unblinking. "Mr. President, blaming others doesn't build trust. It destroys it." Trump laughed under his breath, shaking his head. "You talk about trust, but you had your own secrets, didn't you? I remember your birth certificate, your background. So many questions. People just wanted answers." The air went cold. The mention of that old rumor, one that had fueled years of division, sent a ripple through the room. Obama stayed silent for a few seconds. Then he said quietly, "After all these years, that's still what you reach for?" Trump leaned forward, his tone sharp now. "It's not reaching. It's the truth. People wanted to know who you really were. That's not my fault." Obama tilted his head slightly. His expression didn't change, but his voice took on a new edge. Calm, sharp, deliberate. "You see, that's the difference between us. When I'm challenged, I answer. When you're challenged, you attack." Trump's smile faded. "I don't attack, I defend this country." "Against what?" Obama asked softly. "Accountability?" The tension snapped like a live wire. Trump's face flushed slightly as he straightened in his chair. He tried to laugh, but it came out tight. "You've got nothing left but words. Same as always. I'm the one doing something for this nation." Obama's eyes narrowed, and for the first time his tone dropped lower. Not louder, but heavier. "Doing something is only good if it helps people, not yourself." That struck a nerve. Trump's expression hardened. "You sound bitter, Barack," he said, smirking again. "You couldn't handle it when I won, and you still can't." Obama didn't blink. "This isn't about winning or losing. It's about truth. And if that truth makes you uncomfortable, maybe that's where we should start. The room went silent again. Even the faint hum of the air conditioner seemed to vanish. Trump leaned forward, his voice now almost a growl. You think you're better than me. You think your words make you righteous. But people chose me because I speak for them. You're out of touch. Obama met his stare, calm and unbroken. No, he said softly. You speak to their anger. But anger isn't leadership. That moment was electric. Two men, two visions of America, locked in a silent standoff. One built on noise and pride, the other on quiet persistence. The audience felt it too. This wasn't politics anymore. This was something deeper. A battle over truth itself. Trump leaned back, shaking his head. You can talk all you want, he muttered. You'll never get it. Obama looked down briefly, then back up. I understand more than you think, he said quietly. I understand what happens when truth becomes optional. For the first time, Trump didn't respond right away. His eyes darted to the cameras, then back to Obama. The calm before had turned into a storm. But no one knew the hardest hit was still to come. Because what Obama said next, the question he was about to ask, would shake the entire room. The air in the room felt heavy. Trump's last words were still hanging there, but their power was fading. For the first time in the hearing, his voice no longer commanded the space. Obama sat quietly, his gaze steady as though weighing every breath before speaking. Then, with a calm that felt almost too still for the moment, he leaned forward and spoke. Mr. President, he said softly, you've spoken a lot about winning, about success, about greatness. But I have just one question for you. Trump looked at him, suspicious. Obama's tone didn't sound confrontational. It sounded curious, almost gentle. That only made the room tenser. Obama continued, his voice steady. Is Ivanka Barron's mom, yes or no? The words cut through the silence like a blade. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The question wasn't loud, yet it hit with shocking force. Trump blinked, caught off guard. He wasn't expecting this, not here, not now. He shifted slightly, a faint flush creeping up his neck. That's a ridiculous question, he said, his voice tight. Completely inappropriate. Obama didn't react. His tone didn't change. It's a simple question, he said. Yes or no? The audience murmured quietly, unsure what they had just heard or what it meant. But one thing was clear, and the power dynamic had flipped. Obama's calm had become its own kind of control. Trump, who once dominated every room he entered, suddenly seemed trapped inside one. Trump tried to laugh, forcing a smirk. I don't waste time with nonsense, he said. We're here to talk about America, not my family. Obama nodded slightly. Exactly, he said. We're here to talk about truth, and how easily it's avoided when the questions make us uncomfortable. Trump's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth to speak, but stopped. He knew any answer, even silence, would be heard around the world. Obama didn't press louder. He pressed slower. You've spoken about strength, he said quietly. But strength isn't about avoiding hard truths. It's about facing them, even when they make us look in the mirror. The room had fallen completely still again. Every person could feel the shift. It wasn't about the question anymore, Inkar. It was about what the question represented. Accountability, transparency, the things power always tries to escape. Trump cleared his throat. You're trying to distract from your own failures, he said quickly, leaning forward. Typical Obama move. When you can't win an argument, you make it personal. Obama shook his head slowly. It's not personal, he said. It's a lesson. When a leader refuses to answer something simple, imagine what happens when the questions get harder. That hit deeper than any accusation could. You could almost feel the breath leave the room. Trump sat back, folding his arms. I'm not going to entertain cheap shots, he muttered. This hearing is a joke. Obama looked down for a moment, then back up, his eyes steady. What's cheap, he said softly, is pretending honesty doesn't matter. Trump shifted again, his composure slipping further. I've done more for this country than you ever did, he said sharply. People love what I've done. They love me. Obama didn't argue. They love what America could be, he replied. But love built on illusion fades fast. When truth catches up, pride alone can't hold it together. Trump's fingers drummed against the table. He was done pretending calm. You think you're clever, he said. But this is just talk. Empty talk. Obama leaned forward slightly. If it's empty, Why does it make you so uncomfortable? Trump didn't answer. Instead, he pushed back his chair and stood. This is a waste of time, he said, his voice louder now, his control breaking. I'm not going to sit here while you play games. He turned to leave, but Obama's voice stopped him at the door. Mr. President, he said quietly, truth has a way of following us, and even when we walk away. Trump froze for a second, his back to the room. Then he straightened his jacket and left without looking back. The echo of the door closing felt final. Inside the hall, silence filled the space again. No one spoke. The cameras were still rolling, but no one seemed to notice. Everyone's eyes were on Obama, the man who had just turned a heated confrontation into something much deeper. He sat there, calm, composed, and almost sad. Not triumphant, just steady. It wasn't victory he carried in that moment, but clarity. He looked at the committee and said quietly, leadership isn't about the loudest voice. It's about the clearest truth, that was all. He stood, thanked the chairperson, and left the room. The audience remained still for several seconds, unsure how to react. But deep down, they knew they had witnessed something rare. A moment when truth didn't need to shout to win. Outside the building, reporters waited, expecting fireworks. But Obama didn't give them any. He simply said, America deserves honesty, and walked away. The sun was setting behind him, casting long shadows across the steps. The world would argue for days about what had happened in that hearing. But those who were there knew one thing for certain. When Obama asked that question, it wasn't just about Trump. It was about every leader who thinks the truth can be dodged forever. And in that moment, silence became more powerful than noise, and calm became the loudest sound in the room.